The Hound of the Baskervilles, Chapter 4. The Cab Driver. We arrived at the hotel just before 2 o'clock. Before we went up to see Sir Henry, Holmes asked to see the list of guests. 2 people had arrived after Sir Henry, and both were old guests, well known to the hotel owner. "We have learned something important, Watson. Whoever is following Sir Henry is not staying in this hotel." "Why is that important?" "Because it means that they do not want Sir Henry to see them. That tells us," he broke suddenly. "Hullo! What is happening here?" As we climbed the stairs, we heard a furious voice. It was Sir Henry, red in the face with anger. He was holding a dusty old black boot in his hand and was shouting at one of the hotel employees. "They think I'm an idiot!" he cried as we approached. "Another boot has gone. A new brown one disappeared yesterday, and now one of my old black ones has been stolen." After Sir Henry calmed down, we had a pleasant lunch. Holmes asked Sir Henry what his plans were. "To go to Baskerville Hall at the end of this week," said Sir Henry without hesitation. "A good decision, I think," said Holmes. "Do you know that you were followed from Baker Street this morning?" Dr. Mortimer looked shocked. "By whom?" "That, unfortunately, I cannot say. Do you know anyone who lives on Dartmoor with a full black beard?" "No." "Ah, yes, Barrymore, the butler, has a full black beard." "Interesting. Send a telegram asking if everything is ready for Sir Henry, and give instructions that it should be given directly to Mr. Barrymore and returned here if he is not there. That should tell us if he is still in Devon." "Very clever," said Sir Henry. "Who is this Barrymore fellow, anyway?" "He looks after the Hall," said Mortimer. "His family has done this for 4 generations now. Mr. Barrymore and his wife are good people, very respected." "Did Sir Charles leave the Barrymores any money after he died?" asked Holmes. "Yes, he was very generous to his friends. Mr. and Mrs. Barrymore received £500 each. I received £1,000, and there were other smaller gifts. He was a very rich man. The total value of his estate, his money, land, and property, was almost £1,000,000. Holmes raised his eyebrows in surprise. "A lot of money. One more question, Dr. Mortimer. If anything happened to Sir Henry, who would be next in line for Sir Charles's estate?" "Roger Baskerville, Sir Charles's younger brother, died unmarried. The estate would go to the Desmonds, cousins of Sir Charles. James Desmond is an elderly clergyman. I met him once, a most gentle and kind man. Sir Charles wanted to give him some money as a gift, but he refused to take even a penny." "I see. Sir Henry, I agree that you should go to Devon as quickly as possible. However, you should not go alone." "Dr. Mortimer will go with me." "Of course," said Holmes, "but Dr. Mortimer has his medical practice, and his house is a long way from yours. You need to take someone else, a trustworthy man who will be at your side at all times. I have some matters in London that I must deal with. However, my friend Dr. Watson is the perfect companion. There is no one better to have at your side when there is a danger." It was rather a shock, and I did not have time to answer before Sir Henry was shaking my hand and thanking me. Just before dinner 2 messages arrived. The first was from Devon, and told us that Mr. Barrymore was at the Hall and had not gone to London. The second was from Cartwright. He had not found the newspaper page. As we read these messages, there was a ring at the bell. It was the driver of cab 2704. "I was told you were looking for me," he said. "I've driven the cab for 7 years and no one has ever complained. So what's the problem?" "Oh, there's no problem, my good man," said Holmes. "Actually, I have some money for you if you can help me." "Well, this is a good day," said the cab driver. "What can I do for you?" "I'd want your name and address in case I need to speak to you again. But first, tell me about the man who was in your cab this morning. He watched this house and then followed two gentlemen down Regent Street. Who was he?" The man looked surprised. "It seems you already know everything," he said. "The man told me he was a detective, and that I should not tell anyone about him." "Did he say anything else?" "He told me his name," replied the driver. "Oh!" Holmes glanced quickly at me. "Did he really? And what was his name?" "His name," said the driver, "was Mr. Sherlock Holmes." "Ha! He is a smart one, Watson, no doubt. Where did you pick him up?" "Trafalgar Square, sir. He paid me well to drive him all day. First we drove to the Northumberland Hotel and waited for two gentlemen. We followed them here, and then, when they came out, we followed them again. Halfway down Regent Street he shouted for me to go quickly to Waterloo Station, and then he paid. That was when he told me he was called Sherlock Holmes." "Can you describe this Sherlock Holmes?" The cabman scratched his head. He was about 40 years old, a little shorter than you. He was dressed like a gentleman. He had a bushy black beard and a pale face." The cabman left happily with money in his hand, and Holmes turned to me. "Well, Watson, we have had no luck with our spy, with the letter, or with Mr. Barrymore. 3 failures. The man we are looking for is no fool. Be careful in Devon, and keep your army revolver with you. This case is a dangerous one, and I'll be happy when you are safely back in Baker Street." Chapter 5. The Butterfly Collector. The train journey to Devon was pleasant, and there was time to talk with Sir Henry and Dr. Mortimer. Soon we left the buildings of London behind, and the world outside our windows changed to green. "I've travelled all over the world," said Sir Henry, "but nowhere is as beautiful to me as Devon and Dartmoor." "Do you remember Baskerville Hall?" I asked. "No, I lived in a small cottage and never saw the hall. I was just a teenager when I left for America." We took a carriage from the railway station to the hall. Along the way we saw a soldier standing on a hill and watching the road, and the driver told us that a criminal had escaped from Princeton prison 3 days ago. The criminal was a dangerous man, a murderer called Selden. Baskerville Hall was a huge building, dark and quite frightening. Even Sir Henry was quiet as we approached. "Welcome, Sir Henry, welcome to Baskerville Hall." A tall man had come out to open the door of our carriage, and in the doorway we could see a woman standing, Mr. and Mrs. Barrymore. Dr. Mortimer could not stay, so we said good-bye to him and went inside to warm ourselves by the fire. Mr. Barrymore showed us to our rooms. It was a dark and gloomy house, and even during dinner we did not speak very much. We were tired after our journey, and we decided to go to bed early. Before I went to sleep, I heard an unexpected sound, a woman's voice crying terribly sadly. It came from inside the house, I was sure, and I listened carefully for half an hour, but I did not hear it again. The hall was a nicer place in the morning when the sun was shining. "I suppose we were just tired from the journey," said Sir Henry. "It is quite a cheerful place now we have rested." "Perhaps that is true," I said, "but there is some sadness in the house." "Did you hear a woman sobbing in the night?" "I thought I did, just before I fell asleep, but then I decided it was probably just a dream." Sir Henry asked Mr. Barrymore about it. He said that only his wife was in this part of the house, and that she had not been crying, but when I saw Mrs. Barrymore after breakfast, her eyes were red. I wondered why she had been crying, and why Mr. Barrymore had lied. I made a note to speak to Holmes about this. Sir Henry had some work to do, so I took a walk to the village of Grimpen. I visited the post office to find out if our telegram had been given to Mr. Barrymore, but I learned that it was Mrs. Barrymore who had taken the telegram, as her husband had been in the attic at the time. It was possible, then, that he had been in London and not in Devon.